Since this is a sports channel, I'm going to take this opportunity to speak on a sports topic that's kind of brewing right now on the social media streets. Recently, Stephen A. Smith was on the Joe Budden podcast, and he basically said, look, he didn't like working with Max Kellerman. So now you got a lot of people online reacting to it, and what really got me to do this video was the reaction was actually surprising. I saw black person after black person after black person basically clowning Stephen A. and sticking up for Max Kellerman. And I was surprised by that because, honestly, if we're 100% honest about Max Kellerman and his contribution to the sports conversation, and more specifically, his contributions to ESPN and First Take, it's like, it's a very thin resume if we're being honest. And so, I kept seeing black person after black person defending Max Kellerman. But what stood out to me was nobody was defending the fact that he was just this great sports journalist, or he was just this great sports insider that was breaking news, or he was just good at breaking down the X's and O's, or he just gave these great takes and these great predictions that came true. Nobody was taking his side based upon sports. Everybody was choosing up on Max Kellerman based on culture. And that's what stood out to me. Every single person that was like, oh, I'm riding with Max, was like, oh yeah, because he keep it real. And he down for us more than Stephen A. Smith. And so that's why I'm talking about this, because that's interesting to me. Because it's clear to me that the only reason that black folks that are defending Max, the reason that they are is because they feel as though, quote unquote, he was an ally. He spoke truth to power. He used his whiteness to, you know how the stuff goes. And that's what we got to talk about. Because in my personal opinion, Max was playing the only card that he could play. Because once again, let's just go back to Max's time at ESPN. More specifically, First Take. He was not a sports journalist, so he didn't have a history of being a beat writer and covering a team and knowing owners and players and executives and having sources and inside scoops and relationships. He didn't have that angle. He wasn't like this super strong personality that was very entertaining on television. He didn't have that angle. He wasn't known as somebody who gave all these hot, before the curve takes that eventually came true. He didn't have that angle. So when you really think about it, in terms of the sports conversation, Max Kellerman didn't really contribute anything. He didn't break any stories. He didn't have any sources. He didn't have any relationships. He didn't have any in-depth analysis or able to break down any film or any tape because he never played. He didn't have that either. Nor did he have takes that you would go, okay, yeah. Max was one of the first people to say that. He didn't have any of that. As a matter of fact, Max Kellerman had some of the worst takes. Remember, Max Kellerman was the one who said, if I need a last shot, I want Andre Iguodala to take the last shot. That's what he said. He said, hey, after Kawhi Leonard won the championship with Toronto, he said, hey, if, Kawhi Leonard is on the verge of passing LeBron and becoming a better player than LeBron and being the best player, he said that. He also said, hey, Tom Brady is about to be a bum and he's going to fall off of a cliff. And he said that 6 years too early, basically. Because, like, after he said that, Tom Brady won 2 more Super Bowls. After he, like, so if we just being real, he had no real contributions to the sports conversation. And so when you don't have anything contribute to the conversation, what do you have to do? You have to attach yourself to the culture to mask the fact that you aren't contributing anything. And it wasn't just Max. A lot of people have done that and are doing it right now. Like, let's be real. It's a lot of people that, if you think about them in the sports realm and them on TV and all that kind of stuff, they don't really have any good sports takes or sources or information. They're not really moving the conversation forward or really contributing anything of substance to the sports conversation. And on top of that, they're not really all that entertaining or good on camera either. And a lot of them are masking that by attaching themselves to the culture. So they're real funny on Twitter. And they'll take, like, the new popular phrase or sayings or memes, and they'll use them on TV or on their podcast to try to make viral moments. Right? Or they'll go over the top and try to act like they're just out here just fighting and denouncing racism at every turn to try and go viral off of that. And all I'm saying is a lot of why they're doing those things is because that's providing them cover. And it's distracting you from the fact that in terms of the sports conversation, they aren't really adding anything to it. It was a lot of people, man, it's a lot of that going on in the sports world. It's a lot of people attaching themselves to race issues and political issues and, gender issues to cover up for the fact that when it comes to the sports conversation, they're not saying anything that anybody cares about. There's a lot of people who are really actively engaged in Black Twitter to be seen as cool and down with the culture on Black Twitter, because when you look at their actual contributions to sports content, it's not really anything there. I don't really want to get into names because it's not even really about that. But there was a lot of people who injected politics and injected their anti-Trump stuff into their sports conversation because they didn't really have anything of substance to talk about in their sports conversation. There's a lot of people who wanted to, have CNN type conversations on ESPN and FS1 because ultimately they didn't really have anything that anybody cared about to say about sports. That's why when I was on Twitter and I saw all these people defending Max, I kept asking people, what solid contribution can you name that Max Kellerman made to the sports conversation? I kept saying, what good sports take do you remember from Max Kellerman? Nobody could answer the question because there wasn't one. And so if I'm Stephen A., granted, if I'm Stephen A., I probably wouldn't have said what he said on Joe Budden's podcast, even though obviously it's true, but, I just want to, I wouldn't necessarily have kicked the man while he's down or anything like that. I probably wouldn't have did that. But I can understand Stephen A's frustration. Because you got all these black folks, riding with Max over Stephen A. Because, quote unquote, Max is more down with the people than Stephen A. And it's like, was he really, though? Or was he playing an angle because, once again, he didn't have anything to contribute to the actual sports conversation on First Take? I mean, think about it. When you're not really adding anything of value to the First Take conversation, how easy would it be to just get on Black Twitter and figure out what they're saying and what black people want to hear and run on ESPN and say that, so at least you can get some people on your side, because you're not really saying nothing when it comes to sports. So yeah, if I was Stephen A, I'd be really bothered by that. Like, this dude keep running up here, injecting all this cultural stuff into the conversation because he can't have a sports conversation because he don't know what he's talking about. So he's up here regurgitating cultural talking points that he don't even believe in because he knows they're popular. And people are actually going for that. Like, yeah, if I was Stephen A, I'd be upset too. Like, hold on, like, y'all really going for this? Like, for real? This dude be up here, he don't be saying nothing. The cultural stuff that y'all are riding for him for, he stole all that from off of Black Twitter. All he doing is regurgitating Black Twitter. That's all he doing. He ain't come up with no, like, even if he was to have, like, injecting culture into the sports, at least could have been, like, original thoughts and ideas. He didn't even interject any original thoughts and ideas into the sports conversation. So not only was he having cultural conversations because he couldn't have the sports conversation, but his cultural analysis wasn't even original. It was regurgitation from somewhere else. And people was eating it up. I'd be a little bothered by that too. Like, are y'all for real? But a lot of us, I don't know what it is, but a lot of us, man, we just love to hear white people say certain things. It don't matter what the motivation is. It don't matter what they have to gain from it. It's just certain stuff that we believe we like for white folk to say it to and co-sign. It makes some of us feel good on the inside. Right? So if I was Stephen A, I'd be a little upset about that too. Like, hold up, man. This dude don't be saying nothing that makes any kind of sense involving sports. He always want to have the cultural conversation. And when he do the cultural thing, all he doing is regurgitating what he saw on Twitter. Because that's what y'all want to hear. And y'all really going for this? Like, yeah, bro, I wouldn't like that dude either, man. I ain't going to lie to you. Like, for real, man, that's what it was, man. Because I asked like 5 or 6 different people that I saw. I'm with Max. Forget Stephen A. I'm with Max. I asked person after person after person, can you give me one instance where Max said something about sports where you said, oh yeah, that was good, or that was some new information? Nobody could give me anything. I kept asking people, give me one solid sports take that you remember from Max Kellerman. And nobody could remember one solid sports take from Max Kellerman. The guy that everybody's defending, nobody can tell me one sports take of his. Like, And all I'm saying is maybe that's why he had the talking points, the cultural talking points that he had. Because he didn't have any sports talking points. That's all I'm saying. Like, come on, man. Just think about that.